Hello, this is my benchmark ethical dilemma presentation, and I chose the helpful receptionist video as my case study. So the ethical dilemma in this video presented, it does depict a scenario where a man claiming to be the spouse of a client at a clinic goes to the receptionist and states that he would like to pass a message to her that he has to take a last minute trip, and he wants to confirm that she is his wife is a client there, and the receptionist, trying to be helpful, states that she just went back with the therapist and she was unavailable, and so really confirming, right, that she was actually being seen there. And then when the wife comes out, or uh, the individual that he was attempting to pass the message to comes out and is very concerned about this information getting out to him, and expresses that they are in the middle of a divorce and that she is concerned that this information can be held against her. So really, it brings up a couple of good points. We'll kind of problem solve our way through this. Bremley and Herlihy 2016 suggests that effective professional practice depends on working with the client's best interest in mind, which includes the counselor having good intentions and wanting to do the right thing. Counselors train in ethics throughout their master's level training and agree to adopt similar professional values and moral principles as their peers. Professional counselors can ensure that they are practicing in an ethical way by following the guidelines laid out in the ACA's Code of Ethics, as well as being familiar with federal and state ethical standards. Kabir 2017 identifies questions of confidentiality as the single greatest source of ethical dilemma in counseling. So I'm going to just explore this scenario and utilize the ethical decision making process along with the ACA Code of Ethics and federal and state regulations to make an appropriate course of action in response to this ethical dilemma. So identifying the problem in this scenario is that Amy, the receptionist, violated the client's confidentiality by agreeing to pass a message from her, supposed husband. And so, by agreeing to pass this message, Amy confirmed that the client was being seen by a counselor at the clinic. The client obviously informs her that this, breached confidentiality, and obviously she was going to be concerned that this information could be utilized by him in a custody hearing. So this problem is a combination of an ethical, legal, and professional violation. Ethically, the client's confidentiality was breached as her status as a client at the clinic was disclosed without her consent. When the receptionist confirmed she was seen at the clinic, she also violated the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, that is federally mandated. This also violated the professional standards that counselors and their and everybody that's working in a clinic, they strive to adhere to. So there are multiple codes from the codes of ethics that are applicable to this scenario. Part B, .1.c, respect for confidentiality, instructs counselors to protect the client's confidential information and to only disclose their information with appropriate consent or with legal justification, and that's via the ACA 2014 guidelines. The client stated she was concerned her husband would find out, which insinuates that she didn't fill out any consent form identifying him as someone who could be privy to her treatment information. Section B.3, titled Information Shared with Others, directs counselors to make every effort to ensure that confidentiality is maintained, even by subordinates, to include clerical assistants. That's ACA 2014. Although the receptionist is not a counselor, she's still expected to understand the principles of consent and confidentiality. So I eventually plan to pursue licensure in the state of Florida. According to Florida State Legislature, and this is 2022, Title 7, Chapter 90.503, Section C states that a communication is between a client and a counselor is confidential and is not intended to be disclosed to a third party unless they are identified as someone involved in consultation, those necessary for transmission of communication, or those participating in treatment and diagnosis under the direction of the therapist. The client's husband did not fit into any of those identified categories, which was a violation of state law. Also, Part 2 of the same statute states a patient who has privilege to refuse to disclose and to prevent any other person from disclosing confidential communications or records made for the purpose of diagnosis or treatment of the patient's mental or emotional condition. That's Florida State Legislature 2022. The federal law that was violated in this scenario would be the HIPAA Act of 1996. And this federal law really established national standards to protect sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or knowledge. And that is a quote from HIPAA in 1996. So the ACA identifies 6 underlying principles to include autonomy, non-maleficence, beneficence, justice, fidelity, and veracity. In violating the client's privacy, the receptionist broke the principle of non-maleficence. And now, do I think it was? I don't believe it was intentional. It was accidental, but still, that is right. Really, it could have brought harm to the patient, which it looks like it did just based on her reaction. And that was quote from the ACA 2014 Code of Ethics. The patient stated that she was fearful, right? So in this scenario, the decision by the counselor or receptionist to not release the client's information seems intuitive. There were no concerns regarding the client's safety or the safety of others, right? Because, like I said, even though it didn't seem like it was malicious or on purpose, it was still pretty negligent, right? Um, so the issue is the issue of just breaking confidentiality in general is an ongoing discussion, right? The challenges of it. While there are laws that mandate confidentiality, except in legal situations that require it, Labit 2019 argues that the inpatient medical setting presents challenges to the maintenance of a patient's privacy and confidentiality. This challenge arises as the counselor may, at times, they must engage with family members and sometimes friends of the patients to get vital information. There are also scenarios where a patient can be heavily medicated or sedated, and family members can provide important historical information. The principle of non-maleficence can cause ethical dilemmas for counselors providing care to their clients at times. Nalati 2019 points out the ethical concerns that arise from trauma-focused treatments that do not fully address symptomology of PTSD patients. These ethical issues are a result of the counselor incompletely addressing the client's preferences and the clinician's judgment on matters related to preferred socio-emotional outcomes. Both of these examples would require the counselor to consider the ethical principle of non-maleficence and weigh the benefits of breaking confidentiality or performing a psychological intervention and whether it outweighs the potential harm to the client. So potential courses of action that I could take that were taken in this scenario, speak directly with the receptionist, right? Inform her, hey, that was a violation, right, of the patient's uh, confidentiality, privacy. I could fire the staff member on the spot, right? That could be an option, right? Um, I could, of course, create training for the staff to engage in, ongoing training for the staff as well. And I can also consult with a state or national professional or association. So potential consequences of this action, right? So the staff could comply with the requirements, training requirements. They might quit, right? If they see me, right? If I engage and maybe create a culture of fear instead of a culture of education, staff members may quit, right? That may backfire on me. Staff members can also, right, through training, gain a greater understanding of confidentiality and then compliance can become part of the culture of the clinic, hopefully. So to fix the problem in this scenario, I would immediately speak with the receptionist. I wouldn't fire her about how she violated the client's privacy by confirming that she was seen at the clinic. I would then conduct training with all of the staff on exceptions to privacy and confidentiality in clinical and counseling settings. Drogan 2019 identifies danger to self, child victim of a crime, assisting in committing a crime, court appointment, sanity proceedings, competency proceedings, and a lawsuit against a therapist as the only scenarios where a patient yields their right to privacy. I would ensure all staff members are educated on the terms privacy, confidentiality, and privileged communications and the differences between them. I would also review the state laws and HIPAA laws with all employees. Tariq and Hackert 2022 affirmed that HIPAA applies to all healthcare workers, and if a client's treatment is discussed with others who are not involved in the client's care, then HIPAA was violated. Lastly, I would ensure that ongoing training would be conducted with all staff members at least twice a year, and anytime changes are made to laws regarding privacy or confidentiality. A cross-sectional study conducted by Tegegni et al. 2022 found that healthcare professionals have a limited attitude towards patient confidentiality, but have relatively good knowledge. The same study found that providing a continuing medical ethics training was useful in enhancing healthcare professionals' knowledge and attitude towards patient confidentiality. And that was Tigigny et al. 2022. So Stadler, 1986, suggests applying 3 tests to ethical decisions. So the test of uh, justice. So what would this look like, right? The test of justice would kind of the counselor should consider um, if he or she would treat others the same in a similar situation, right? And so, yes, I think that I would want all of my clients to feel comfortable and safe that their information is going to be right. I think upholding confidentiality is something that absolutely would pass the test of justice. Test of publicity, excuse me. This test, the counselor really should consider if he or she would share a decision with others, or if you would be concerned if this decision is widely published, right? And so, yeah, upholding the confidentiality, right, the laws that I'm bound by ethically and by state and federal law, I would definitely think that would pass the test of publicity, right? And the test of universality as well, right? So upholding these, um, absolutely, right? This applies across the board. There's not really scenarios other than the ones that we have already discussed that would, require us to break confidentiality. So implementing this as well, staff, right, would complete training during initial orientation when they were onboarding. They would sign forms stating that they have received the training, and they would sign kind of an ethical agreement as well if they were hired there, that they agree to follow the professional code of ethics and complete that training twice a year based on the information, right, that new guidelines come out, and it's more effective way of ensuring continued compliance. These are my references, and thank you for your time.